The iron gates stood open, which should have been her first warning. Rowena Ashwell pressed her mare forward through the downpour, rain plastering her traveling cloak to her shoulders. Lightning split the sky, illuminating the vast stone manor ahead. Greystone Hall, supposedly abandoned for decades. The storm had forced her off the main road 3 miles back when a fallen tree blocked the path to the coaching inn. She had two choices: shelter in the woods until dawn, or trespass. The decision made itself when thunder cracked so close her horse reared. Rowena dismounted, leading the trembling animal toward what appeared to be a carriage house. The structure loomed dark and silent, but the door yielded when she pushed. Inside, the air smelled of old hay and leather, but it was dry. She secured her mare in a stall that still had clean water in its trough, odd that, and turned toward the main house. Every window blazed with candlelight. Rowena stopped in the courtyard, rain streaming down her face. Abandoned estates did not light themselves. Someone lived here, which meant she was about to commit a far more serious transgression than simple trespassing. But the alternative was pneumonia, and she had a commission to deliver in 3 days. The botanical illustrations in her satchel represented 6 months of work, and her only income until autumn. She climbed the front steps and knocked. The door opened immediately. The man who stood in the entrance was tall, dark-haired, and dressed in evening clothes that would not have looked out of place at a London ball. His cravat was perfectly tied. His waistcoat showed no wrinkles. He looked at her with eyes the color of winter fog and said, "You should not have come here. Not a greeting, a warning." "I apologize for the intrusion," Rowena said, lifting her chin despite the water dripping from her hem. "The storm forced me off the road. I need shelter until morning, nothing more. I can pay." "I do not want your money." His voice was quiet, almost gentle, but something in it made her skin prickle. "I want you to leave. Now. Before you cannot." Lightning flashed again, so bright it turned the world white. In that instant, Rowena saw his shadow cast against the marble floor behind him. It did not match his form. It stretched too long, too thin, with angles that belonged to something other than human. Thunder followed, shaking the ground. Her horse screamed in the carriage house. "I cannot leave," Rowena said, meeting his gaze. "My mare will not survive the storm, and neither will I. Whatever you are, whatever danger you represent, it cannot be worse than drowning in a ditch." For a long moment he simply stared at her. Then he stepped aside. "You will regret that calculation," he said. "But come in." The entrance hall was magnificent. Black and white marble floors, a curved staircase, portraits lining the walls. Every candle in every sconce burned steadily despite the drafts that should have extinguished them. Rowena's boots squelched as she crossed the threshold. The door closed behind her with a sound like a crypt ceiling. "My name is Rowena Ashwell," she said, because manners seemed important in the face of the impossible. "I am a botanical illustrator traveling from Winchester to Bath. I mean no harm to your household." "I have no household." He moved past her toward an inner door, his footsteps utterly silent. "I am Gervase Mortlake. I have lived alone in this house for longer than you can imagine. The servants left in 1782. The village forgot this place existed sometime during the Regency. You are the first living soul to cross that threshold in 43 years. Rowena's hand tightened on her satchel strap. "That is not possible. The candles are lit. The carriage house has fresh water. Someone maintains, I maintain it." He turned to face her, and in the candlelight his features were sharp as cut glass, beautiful and terrible. "I do not sleep, Miss Ashwell. I have not slept since 1645. I light the candles because the darkness reminds me of the grave I should occupy. I keep the water fresh because I remember being thirsty. I open the gates on stormy nights because I'm lonely, and loneliness makes one foolish." The words hung between them like a confession. "You opened the gates," Rowena said slowly. "You wanted someone to come." "I wanted to see if anyone would." His smile was bitter. "And now you have, and I must decide what to do with you." You could offer me tea and a place by the fire, Rowena suggested, though her pulse kicked at the base of her throat. That is what civilized people do for travelers in distress. I am not civilized. But he gestured toward the inner door. The drawing room is this way. I will build you a fire. You will dry your clothes. At dawn, you will leave, and never speak of this place. That is the bargain. Agreed, Rowena said, though she suspected the bargain was far more complicated than he made it sound. The drawing room was a museum of centuries. Jacobean furniture sat beside Regency pieces. Medieval tapestries hung next to Georgian portraits. Books in Latin, French, and English filled shelves that climbed to the ceiling. Gervase Mortlake moved through this accumulated history like a ghost, building a fire with hands that never fumbled, never hesitated. Rowena set her satchel on a chair and removed her soaked cloak. Beneath it, her traveling dress was damp but salvageable. She spread the cloak before the fire and turned to find him watching her with an expression she could not decipher. "You are not afraid," he said. "I am terrified." Rowena met his gaze. But fear and paralysis are not the same thing. I have been afraid before. I learned to function through it. When? The question was too intimate for strangers, but nothing about this night followed normal rules. When my father died and left debts that consumed our home. When my brother emigrated to India, and I had to choose between marriage to a man I despised or independence through work. When I realized I would spend my life alone because I chose freedom over security. She lifted her chin. Fear is familiar, Mr. Mortlake. You are merely a new variation. A muscle tightened across his face. Surprise, perhaps, or recognition. You are braver than most. I am practical. Rowena moved to the bookshelf, running her fingers along the spines. These are valuable, first editions, some of them. Why do you keep them if you live alone? Because I remember when they were new. He stood by the fire, hands clasped behind his back. I remember the debates they sparked, the scandals, the revolutions they inspired. Books are the only companions that do not age, do not die, do not leave. That sounds unbearably lonely. It is. The admission was so quiet she almost missed it. But loneliness is safer than the alternative. Rowena turned to face him fully. What is the alternative? Caring for someone who will wither and die while I remain unchanged. His eyes met hers, and in them she saw centuries of accumulated grief. Watching time steal everything I love, again, and again, and again. So you choose isolation. I choose not to inflict myself on the innocent. That is not your choice to make, Rowena said sharply. The innocent can decide for themselves what they will endure. His laugh was harsh. You do not know what I am. I know you warned me away. I know you are building me a fire despite claiming to be dangerous. I know you have kept this house beautiful for decades with no one to see it but yourself. She crossed her arms. Whatever you are, Mr. Mortlake, you are not the monster you pretend to be. You are wrong. He moved then, faster than sight, and suddenly he was before her, close enough that she could see the unnatural stillness of his chest. No breath, no heartbeat. I am exactly the monster I claim. I am a creature that should not exist. I drink blood to survive. I have killed. I will kill again. The only thing that separates me from the beasts of my kind is choice, and choice is a thin defense against hunger. Rowena did not step back. When did you last kill? 1798. A man who was beating his wife to death in an alley. I drained him and left his body for the magistrate. His voice was flat. I told myself it was justice. Perhaps it was. But I still remember the taste. That was over 50 years ago. Yes. Then you have more control than you claim. Rowena reached out slowly and placed her hand over where his heart should beat. Nothing. Just cold, still flesh beneath fine linen. You are not a beast, Mr. Mortlake. You are a man who has been alone too long. He caught her wrist, his grip gentle but unbreakable. Do not make the mistake of romanticizing me, Miss Ashwell. I am not a tragic hero. I am a corpse that walks. You are a person in pain, Rowena corrected, and I have some experience with that as well. He released her wrist and stepped back, his expression shuddered. Sleep if you can. There is a bedroom on the second floor, third door on the left. I will wake you at dawn. Where will you be? Here, watching the fire, counting the hours until you leave. He turned away from her. Go, Miss Ashwell, before I forget why I should let you. Rowena wanted to argue, but exhaustion pulled at her bones. She retrieved her satchel and climbed the stairs, finding the bedroom exactly where he said. It was clean, the bed made with fresh linens that smelled of lavender. She locked the door, though she suspected it would not stop him if he chose to enter, and lay down fully clothed. Sleep came despite everything, deep and dreamless. She woke to gray dawn light and the smell of tea. Rowena sat up, disoriented. A tray rested on the bedside table, tea, bread, butter, jam, still warm. She had not heard him enter, had not woken when he set it down. The lock on the door was still engaged. She ate quickly, then gathered her things and descended to the entrance hall. Gervase Mortlake stood by the door, holding her dried cloak. His face was carefully blank. The storm has passed, he said. Your horse is saddled. The road is clear. Rowena took the cloak, her fingers brushing his, cold as marble. Thank you for your hospitality. Thank you for not screaming. A ghost of a smile touched his mouth. It was pleasant to speak with someone again. It does not have to end. The words escaped before she could stop them. I am traveling to Bath, but I will return this way in 3 weeks. I could visit. No. The word was final. You will forget this place. Forget me. Live your life among the living, Miss Ashwell. That is where you belong. And where do you belong? Nowhere. He opened the door. Sunlight streamed in, and he stepped back from it as though burned. Goodbye, Miss Ashwell. Rowena wanted to argue, to protest, to demand he let her make her own choices, but his expression was stone, and she had no right to force herself into his exile. She left. The ride to Bath took 2 days. She delivered her illustrations, collected her payment, and tried to forget the man in the abandoned manor. She failed utterly. 3 weeks later, she returned to Greystone Hall. The gates were closed, locked, chained. Rowena dismounted and examined the barrier. The chains were new, the lock modern. A message: stay away. She climbed the wall instead. The house was dark when she reached it, every window shuttered. She knocked on the door. No answer. She knocked again, harder. I know you are in there, Mr. Mortlake, she called. I can wait all night if necessary. I am extraordinarily stubborn. Silence. I brought you something, she continued. A book, first edition Wordsworth. I thought you might not have it yet, since it was only published last year. I know you collect. The door opened. He looked exactly as he had 3 weeks ago. Exactly as he had looked, she realized, for 200 years. You should not have come back. I disagree. Rowena held up the book. May I come in? Why? The word was anguished. Why would you return to this place? To me? Because you were kind when you did not have to be. Because you have been alone for half a century, and that is wrong. Because I have been alone too, and I understand what it costs. She met his eyes. Because I cannot stop thinking about you, and I suspect you cannot stop thinking about me either. That is not a reason, that is a disaster waiting to happen. Perhaps, Rowena smiled. But I am willing to risk it if you are. For a long moment he simply stared at her. Then, slowly, he stepped aside. You are making a terrible mistake, he said as she entered. Then I will make it with full knowledge of the consequences. Rowena handed him the book. I brought tea as well. Real tea, not whatever ancient leaves you have been drinking. And I have questions. So many questions. Questions. He looked down at the book in his hands, something like wonder crossing his face. About what? Everything. How you became what you are, what you have seen, how you manage the loneliness, whether you have ever tried to find others like yourself. She removed her cloak. I have 3 days before I must return to Winchester. I intend to spend them here, learning everything you will tell me. And if I tell you nothing? Then I will sit in your library and read, and you will have company whether you speak or not. Rowena moved toward the drawing room. But I think you want to speak. I think you have been silent for so long that words have become a kind of hunger. She heard him follow, his footsteps still utterly silent. You are dangerously perceptive, Miss Ashwell. I am an illustrator. I observe details others miss. She settled into a chair by the cold fireplace. Will you tell me your story, Mr. Mortlake? The true one, not the warnings and self-recrimination. He stood in the doorway, the book still in his hands, and the architecture of his face cracked. If I do, you will not want to stay. Let me be the judge of that. So he told her. He had been a physician in London, 1645, during the final years of the Civil War. A woman came to him, dying of a wound that would not heal. He tried to save her. She bit him instead, transforming him as she perished. He woke 3 days later in a plague pit, buried alive, and clawed his way to the surface. The decades that followed were a blur of horror and learning. He discovered what he was, what he needed, what he could do. He killed when he had to, fled when he was discovered, and eventually retreated to this house, his family's estate, inherited when his last living relative died in 1782. I have been here ever since, he finished, watching the world change through books and newspapers, maintaining this place because it is all I have left of who I was, opening the gates on stormy nights because some part of me still hopes for redemption. Rowena had listened without interruption, her teacup balanced on her knee. Now she said, You are not irredeemable. I am a killer. You were a physician who tried to save a dying woman. What happened after was not your choice. She leaned forward. You have not killed in over 50 years. You could have killed me that first night. I was alone, vulnerable, and no one knew where I was. But you fed me tea and gave me shelter instead. That is not the action of a monster. It is the action of a coward too afraid to embrace what he is. No, Rowena's voice was firm. It is the action of a man who chooses humanity over hunger. That is not cowardice. That is strength. He turned away from her, moving to the window. You do not understand. The hunger never stops. Every moment you are near me, I am aware of your heartbeat, your warmth, the blood moving through your veins. It would be so easy to— But you do not. Rowena stood and crossed to him. You do not, Mr. Mortlake. That is what matters. For now. His hands were fists at his sides. But what happens in a year, 5 years, when the hunger becomes unbearable and you are the only living thing within reach? Then we will manage it together. She placed her hand on his arm. You do not have to face this alone anymore. He looked down at her hand, then at her face. You are offering me something I cannot accept. Why not? Because you will age, you will sicken, you will die, and I will remain unchanged, watching it happen. His voice broke. I cannot endure that again. Again? I had a wife, before. She died of consumption in 1643. I could not save her. He pulled away from Rowena's touch. I will not watch another woman I care for waste away while I remain frozen in time. Rowena's heart ached for him. Then make me like you. The words fell into silence like stones into water. No. The refusal was immediate and absolute. Never. I would not curse you with this existence. That is not your decision to make. Rowena's voice was steady. If I choose it, if I understand the cost and choose it anyway, you have no right to refuse me. I have every right. I will not be responsible for destroying your humanity. My humanity is my own to give or keep. She moved to stand before him again, forcing him to meet her eyes. I am 32 years old, Mr. Mortlake. I have no family, no children, no husband. I have my work, which I love, and my independence, which I value. But I am also profoundly alone. I have been alone for a decade, and I will be alone until I die. Her voice softened. Unless I choose otherwise. You have known me for less than a month. I have known you for 3 days and 3 weeks of not being able to forget you. Rowena reached up and touched his face, feeling the cold, still flesh. I am not a foolish girl, Mr. Mortlake. I am a woman who knows her own mind, and I am telling you that I would rather have eternity with you than a normal life with anyone else. You do not know what you are asking. Then tell me, explain it. Give me all the reasons I should refuse. She held his gaze. And then let me decide anyway. He caught her hand, his grip trembling. The transformation is agony. You will die and wake as something other than human. You will need blood to survive. You will watch everyone you know grow old and die. You will be hunted if discovered. You will live in shadows, forever apart from the world you knew. His voice dropped to a whisper. And you will be bound to me, because I will be the one who made you. You will feel my presence always. You will never be entirely free. I am not free now. Rowena's thumb brushed across his knuckles. I am trapped by time, by mortality, by the knowledge that every day brings me closer to death. You are offering me escape from that prison. How is that not freedom? Because you will trade one prison for another. No, she smiled. I will trade solitude for companionship, mortality for eternity, fear of death for fear of living too long. Her voice gentled. Those are not equal trades, Gervais. One is far better than the other. It was the first time she had used his given name. He closed his eyes as though in pain. I cannot, he whispered. I cannot do that to you. Then do it for yourself. Rowena moved closer until they were nearly touching. You have been alone for 50 years. You have punished yourself for sins you did not commit. You have denied yourself connection because you fear loss. She placed her free hand over his heart. But loss is the price of love, Gervais. It always has been. The only way to avoid it is to never love at all, and that is not survival. That is just slow death. I am already dead. No. She leaned up and pressed her lips to his cold cheek. You are the most alive person I have ever met. He shuddered at the touch, his control finally breaking. His arms came around her, pulling her close with a desperation that spoke of all those years spent talking to shadows. If I do this, he said against her hair, if I transform you, there is no going back. You will be bound to me forever. You will be what I am. You will never see sunlight again without pain. You will never taste food again without revulsion. You will never be fully human again. I understand. Do you? He pulled back to look at her. Do you truly understand what you are giving up? Yes. Rowena met his eyes without flinching. And I choose you anyway. For a long moment, he simply stared at her. Then, slowly, he nodded. 3 days. I will give you 3 days to change your mind. If you still want this at the end, if you are certain, I will do it. I will not change my mind. We shall see. The 3 days were a test, though Rowena did not realize it at first. Gervais showed her everything, the hunger that never ceased, the way sunlight burned his skin, the animal blood he drank to survive. He took her to the cellar where he kept his stores, showed her the careful records he maintained, explained the logistics of immortal existence. He also showed her beauty, the way his senses perceived the world, every sound magnified, every scent distinct, every texture sharp as crystal. He took her walking through the grounds at night, showing her the estate as he saw it, alive with nocturnal creatures, painted in shades of silver and shadow. "This is what you will gain," he said on the third night, as they stood in the garden watching bats hunt moths. "And this is what you will lose." He gestured to the eastern horizon, where dawn was still hours away. Sunrise, bird song at morning, the warmth of summer sun on your face, the taste of strawberries, the ability to walk among humans without fear of discovery. "I will gain you," Rowena said simply. "That is enough." "It will not always feel like enough." "Perhaps not," she turned to face him. "But I would rather have eternity with moments of regret than mortality with the certainty of losing you." He cupped her face in his hands, his touch gentle despite his strength. "You are either the bravest woman I have ever met, or the most foolish." "Both, probably," she smiled. "Will you do it? Will you transform me?" "If you are certain." "I am." He kissed her then, the first real kiss they had shared. His lips were cold, but the emotion behind the gesture was warm enough to burn. When he pulled back, his eyes were bright with something that might have been tears if he were still capable of them. "It will hurt," he warned. "The transformation is not gentle." "I know. And you will hate me for it at first." "I will not." "You will." He drew her close, his arms around her. "But I hope you will forgive me eventually." "There is nothing to forgive." Rowena tilted her head, exposing her throat. "Do it, Gervais. Make me yours." He hesitated one final moment, then he bent his head and bit. The pain was exquisite and terrible. Rowena gasped, her hands clutching his shoulders as his teeth pierced her skin. She felt her blood flowing out, felt her life draining away, felt the world growing dim and distant. And then she felt his blood on her lips. "Drink," he commanded, his voice rough. "Drink and live." She drank. The taste was copper and salt, and something indefinable. Power, perhaps, or eternity. It burned down her throat like fire, igniting something deep in her chest. Her heart stuttered, stopped, then beat again with a rhythm that was no longer entirely human. She died in his arms as the sun rose. She woke 3 nights later in a bed that was not hers, in a body that was not quite hers either. Everything was sharper. Sounds, scents, sensations. She could hear mice in the walls, smell the oil in the lamps, feel the individual threads of the sheets against her skin. And she could feel him, her vase, somewhere in the house, his presence like a compass point in her mind. She rose and followed that sense, finding him in the library. He stood by the window staring out at the night, and turned when she entered. "How do you feel?" he asked quietly. "Strange." Rowena examined her hands, noting the unnatural pallor, the stillness of her chest. "But not wrong, not diminished. The hunger will come soon. When it does, I will teach you to manage it. I trust you." She crossed to him, taking his hands. "Thank you." "For what?" "For giving me eternity." She smiled. "For giving me you." He pulled her close, resting his forehead against hers. "I have not given you a gift, Rowena. I have given you a burden. Then we will carry it together." She kissed him, tasting the strange new flavors of her transformed senses. "That is what partners do." "Partners," he repeated, as though testing the word. Then he smiled, a real smile, warm and genuine. "Yes, I suppose we are." They stood together in the library as night deepened around them. Two immortal souls who had found each other across all those years spent talking to shadows. Outside, the world turned without them. Inside, they had all the time in existence to learn each other's stories. And for the first time in 200 years, Gervais Mortlake was not alone. Rowena Ashwell, now Rowena Mortlake, though they would not use that name in public for decades, learned quickly. The hunger was manageable, the transformation complete. They left Greystone Hall eventually, traveling under assumed names, living in different cities, always moving before anyone noticed they did not age. But they always returned to the estate, to the house that had sheltered them both when they needed it most. They filled it with new books, new art, new memories. They opened the gates on stormy nights, offering shelter to travelers who needed it, paying forward the kindness that had brought them together. And on quiet evenings, when the world was still and the night was deep, they sat together in the library and remembered the storm that had changed everything. The night a woman sought shelter and found eternity instead.